Vitaliy, that you today represent an outlier in the United States and not the average.
Very true.
Which part of Russia?
Maybe he agrees. I have a lot of Indian friends, so they, I guess, so they're that, so in the United States, so I guess I'm not as outlier as you think, but
so yeah, you seem to be a man of routine, habits, discipline. I mean, was it always there with you since your childhood? How did you inculcate it?
Oh God,
how did it help?
No. This is the opposite. I am was disorganized, had no routines. As I matured little by little, I started to see value in routines. And I'll be honest, I probably started to appreciate routines and develop routines maybe over the last 10, 15 years.
Okay.
So if you talk to me, for sure 15 years ago, I didn't have many routines. I mean, there are exceptions. When I studied, I was, like in the beginning I was not a good student, but then I realized the reason I was not a good student because I always missed classes. So I told myself that if I miss one class, I'm gonna miss more classes. It's like smoking. Like when I quit smoking, I told myself if I smoke one cigarette, I'm gonna fall off the wagon. I'm gonna start smoking again. Mm. So I would wake up in the morning and I kind of, completely sweating, because I had a dream that I smoked. So, but it's later in my life when I realized the value of routines, and especially, I'll tell you, and I wrote this, I think in this book, talking about during the pandemic, pandemic just completely destroyed all my routines, right? Because all my routines were I wake up in the morning, I write, I go for a walk, I go to work. And then a few times a week, a trainer comes, I meet with a trainer. Mm. So all of this was kind of hinged on I wake up, I write, going to work was a big part of it. And then pandemic, I screwed all this up because I ended up staying at home. And then I found I was complete chaos because my routines were gone. Yeah. And by the way, I love traveling, but one downside of traveling is it screws up my routine. Yeah. This is the only downside of my travel. We went for a family vacation to Mexico. Mm-hmm. And the way Americans travel to Mexico is it's not really Mexico, because what we do, I don't know if you guys know.
Drive down, right?
Huh?
You drove down. Did you drive down or?
No, we fly. No, but we go to a place called Riviera Maya. So this is the only, you see Mexico for about 15 seconds. You get off the plane, get on the bus, and you get in the resort.
And then
and there it's just America again. It's it's only Canadian, etc. So, but I remember we went for 12 days last year, and it was very hot, so I couldn't, all my routines get screwed up. So I realized, and once it gets screwed up, I just I get lost. So what I started doing, I would start getting up at 5 in the morning, at 4:30 in the morning again, so I can go for a walk, because after that it gets very hot. And I had to create new routines for these 10 days. So obviously when we travel and it's chaotic and there's a 12 and a half hour difference between Denver and India. It's incredible. So all these things screwed up all my routines. Yeah. But but I need to have routines to function normally.
But that helps you in a day.
Yes. I just otherwise I feel very unproductive. I feel like I don't have control in life. There are certain things you can control. I can control normally, and that's how I spend my time.
So the the flip side to this also is, as an investor, as a thinker, the serendipity part also plays a very important role, or the meaning in chaos, or the creative side of things. So do you think you miss that, or is that a price you're okay to pay with what you get out of the routine?
I don't think I give up serendipity. Actually, I actually don't think at all, because let's walk through my day, wake up, drink coffee, I write for 2 hours, okay? So there is a lot of serendipity in me sitting in front of the computer and trying to come up with new things. Then I go for a walk. Again, I'm gonna get exposed to the trees, thinking, talking to my friends, listen to books, listen to podcasts. Okay, it's a time allocated to that activity. Okay, and then I work, and then during my, I have some time where I allocate just to doing financial models. I have some time where I just talk on the phone, etc. But it's having time allocated to a certain activity. So there's plenty of serendipity still, comes to my day. It just, if I wander through life without any kind of structure, I'm just become mental mess. That's
I was going to ask, with so much to do in a day, I guess you cover a lot in a day. I guess not, but do you ever feel rushed?
I rarely, when I have deadlines, and I rarely have deadlines, and it's a luxury in my life that I I don't know if you noticed, but sometimes you won't get my article for weeks because I have nothing to say, or because I'm working on an article and it's not done. And so I have a luxury in my life where I rarely have deadlines, and so that's,
you don't impose deadlines on yourself?
Not really.
Yeah.
Even with my books, I did not really have deadlines. So I just wanted to enjoy the process. So that's why so I didn't have deadlines.
So, I can understand why you are hungry. That's your background. How do you make that children remain equally hungry? Because that's going to be a concern. Hey, Dad, you can afford this. Why are you making us go through the grind? Just
I'll ask how the children ask the question.
No, but I would.
No, Sam, ask her. Did you?
Yeah, go ahead, Hannah. She's here to answer.
Putting her on the spot. No. I think my dad was very, very concerned about that for a while because, I think it all started with my brother because he went to Cherry Creek High School, which is like this huge high school where most of the kids are very spoiled, very like, oh, my parents will pay for it, and they have like the highest class cars at like 15, 16, like Mercedes, Teslas, and my dad would he would just see my brother being like, oh, I want the same things, and my dad would be like thinking about, this is from my point of view, I'd always see my dad trying to explain that that's not, you don't need that, and that if you have having all those things is actually not an asset, it takes away from you, and it makes you feel too comfortable in your little circle of, how do I say this? It makes you feel too comfortable in your little circle of peaceful, I live with my parents, they pay for everything, and then when you get out into the real world, you become really unmotivated. You oh, my parents will pay for it. If I mess up, my parents will pay the cost. They can afford it. But my brother, I feel the way my dad had a structure for him, because he was the first one to have to make this mental steps for. My dad would try to explain it to him do you really need this, or is this just something you want because everyone around you has it? My brother would drive this minivan, my mom's old 20-year-old minivan for, he drove it for a year. In the school where every kid had a Mercedes, the highest class Mercedes. My brother, he was at first he's I wish I had a Mercedes, but at least I have a car. And he made this car into his he made a whole backstory for it. He named the car Oksana, and he had this whole skit, and for him, he ended up loving that car more than I think he would love a Mercedes, but because for him, that car was he had to make that car in his head so he wouldn't be oh, my minivan. Instead, for him, that car was I have a car,
And her name is Oksana.
And her name is Oksana. And if you don't like my car, then I don't think we should be friends.
You know, naming cars is an Indian thing as well.
Is it?
By the way, Oksana, for those you don't know, is a pretty common Russian name.
No, actually, it's came from Borat.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, no, my
Borat. Oh,
it's
that's-
about was Borat's
movie,
wife.
yeah.
My son, Tan is right. He had to make this funny backstory, like to name his car after Borat's wife, and
Yeah,
No, I think he named it after the plow.
yeah, huh?
Because it was like, he named it after the plow.
Oh,
because
sorry.
It was,
On
like,
the plow, yeah.
barely working. But, well, I think, like, even now, like, at first, so I understand that, like, I'm more fortunate than so many people, but when in the little circle I see, because I go to like a little Jewish school, everyone's parents are like, oh god, I don't want to mess up my kids, I'm just going to throw money at them so they don't hate me. And my dad is always, he always makes sure that I think about money as like, in a more, like, oh, it can't buy you happiness, instead it can buy you opportunities, but you have to think about it as like a real thing, not just like for example, I have this credit card just for emergencies, and when I got it, at first I was like, oh, I have a credit card, I'm gonna buy everything now. And then after like a month, my dad was like, no, you don't have a credit card anymore. And now I get like $10. I think at first it was $10 a week, but now I've scammed him to giving me $20 a week for food, so I can go out with my friends. And he makes sure to give me just like $10 less than I actually need. So that way when I go out to food, go out to lunch with my friends, I have to think, should I really get like the $20 meal and not be able to eat lunch with my friends for the next week, or should I get something that's like $5 and like allocate my money and think about it in a more different way than if I just swipe my credit card with unlimited money.
Yeah.
And I think it's like you can have unlimited money, but still use it in a way that you don't spoil yourself. You have these systems, like my dad says.
So again, I understand this is it's a kind of high class United States problem. So but this is something this is something like I'm terrified about spoiling my kids. And they know that they are not gonna, that no matter how much money I have,
No, Vitaliy,
they get none of that.
I want to know the typical mentality. You originally from Soviet Russia. Now Russia is a very big country of 11 time zones. Ukraine is a very small country, just like the size of Texas. So what is the mentality in such a huge country invading? What is the mentality of the average Russian? Do they support this war? Because after 1991, during the time of this Mikhail Gorbachev, Glasnost and Perestroika, and now in this age of globalization, it's a shock that Russia is invading this Ukraine. What is the average Russian? Do they support this war? Mentality of the Russians? By the way, I've briefly lived in Ukraine, so and I been to Russia. I think what you also don't realize is there's a lot of historical context here. No, I know. Kiev and Rus and all was there. Yeah. But the point I'm saying, this type of environment, this type of open environment, globalized environment, does not fit in the context of this war now. This type of.
So.
Whether Russian.
So I think it's a very complex question, and you can answer it on many different layers. Number one, average Russian is brainwashed. So where they don't, average Russian today thinks that if Russia did not invade Ukraine, it would be invaded by the West. Like, this makes no sense to you, makes no sense to me, but that's the real. That's there is a great movie with Jim Carrey, The Truman Show.
This propaganda from Russian TV and Russian media. This is basically the.
Yeah, no, this is
pure Russian media propaganda.
Yeah, no, this is kind of.
Ukraine will come and NATO will come to the borders of Russia and all.
Yeah, and that number one. Number two. the nationalism in Russia right now at the level I never seen anything like this before. They're willing to completely, like, it's like when you talk to them, you talk to people who are willing to sacrifice the quality of their life for so that they would respect us. Their words, not mine. Because like it's like when you the bottom line. Let me answer your question this way: if you talk to Russians, and again, to majority of Russians, they're all gonna sound the same. Why they sound the same? Because they've been brainwashed the same. So that's really basically what that's my understanding of what's what's
that's
happening.
a standard strategy every politician uses. When your domestic economy is not doing well, you bring up some foreign policy issue and you unite everyone against a common enemy. So
No, but I'm not gonna eat that. I
It's a nice one. You can have one.
Okay.
But what I want to, gender situation in Russia now, is there now also, a sort of situation of shortfall and food shortages and all are still there?
No. I don't think so.
First it was there, all those in the time of Soviet times.
I think they were there for just a tiny bit when the war started because people just raided the stores. And as I understand, they are like doing actually okay.
In fact, they're actually doing very well. In fact, if this war goes on, I think it's the Germans and the others who might probably, that's my sense. Because they seem to be doing okay. I mean, I think there is no battle on the streets for food, etc.
Not yet.
Long-term economic consequences are bad, obviously.
Yeah.
Capital has fled, some things are bad. But it's just that the Germans seem to be hurting quite a bit.
I think it's short-term versus long-term. So I think Russia will so in the short run, like Russian ruble is actually was making new highs, right?
Yeah.
Which is made no sense except, and I have this great analogy for this, because I would talk to my old Russian friends about this, and they would tell me, "See what how well our ruble is doing," and I give them this analogy. You walk in the street and you see your old friend, and he lost a lot of weight. Here's the thing: he could have lost weight for two reasons. Because he's been working out, and because he has cancer. And so the reason Russian ruble is so expensive today because they can export, thanks to you guys. I'm not very happy about it, but I understand where you're coming from.
It's druzhba. It's druzhba.
I know.
By the way, India is one of the few countries where the proportion of people still supporting Russia or President Putin would be surprisingly high. There is a lot of empathy. I find so you will find that not that they are against Ukraine as such.
No, it's listen. My favorite Indian story is that my favorite Indian story. So in 1984, I was 11 years old, and you guys remember how Russia and India were very close.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you would not see a lot of American movies in Russia, but the Indian movies were, so.
Oh yeah, Raj Kapoor.
Disco Dancer.
Yeah.
So,
Disco Dancer. Right?
So I watched Disco Dancer 5 times. No, listen, as much as I'm frustrated with India buying Russian oil, I also saw all this incredible poverty in this country. And I realized each country has to make a decision. What's best for,
of course.
So
oil does rule the geopolitics still, and I like your ideas about going green and your views on solar and wind versus nuclear.
Yeah. No. See, like what happened is when countries become wealthy, they start taking for granted what got them there.
Yeah.
Right? And if you look at Germany, it was so easy to see that they are completely shocking themselves to Russia, and that this whole green energy is makes people feel good, except not very practical.
Yeah.
And it's just an accounting gimmick, because the way they like if you look actually, the amount of CO2 produced by Germany actually went up, while the price is double.
Yeah, because the peak.
Because of peak coal. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah.
Well, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I think maybe I got this idea from you, from your page that let's say you have, let's say you want to invest in a company and it has a PE of let's say 40. So do you think like this when that okay my base PE should become like 20 if the company is growing, so I add another 10 and maybe it's in a very growing business, so maybe another 15 and then you would come close to 45 or 46.
In my first book, Active Value Investing, I think I discussed that. But let's not use concrete numbers, but let's just directionally. Like if you look at extremes, you have a company that is shrinking, you have a company that's growing. Which one should have a high price earning? Okay. You have a low quality company, you have high quality company. So it's just that, and it's I think most people should not be using price to earnings. And let me tell you why. Because price to earnings are shortcuts, and you should earn the right to use them. The way you earn the right to use them by doing a lot of repetitions and investing, by doing it a lot. And you should probably spend more time looking at discounted cash flow analysis. Okay, it's over time you get a feel for this shortcut. How much is too much? Again, it's just a shortcut. So, like if you put a high growth assumptions in the discounted cash flows, you'll figure out what the business kind of direction. So that's I hope I answered.
How often do you as a fund manager? How often do you see the stock prices of your portfolio companies, and how do you sort of it's like the most unproductive thing to do?
I look at it once a day. Sometimes I forget to look at it.
And how do you react when if things are going there's global meltdown, what happened, COVID or something? How do you keep your sanity at that point of time? So COVID probably was a global phenomena, but
yeah, no. So there's two levels here: personal level and professional level. And professional level has to do with I have clients, right? And I'm really not worried about my reaction, I'm worried about their reaction. And so
when you're managing your own money, it's different. But when you're managing
if I manage my own money, it would be easier for me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now with clients, what I did, during COVID, I went to writing client letters. I don't remember, but I think at some point it was a couple times a week. There were shorter letters, and clients truly appreciate it. Usually I write them 3 or 4 times a year. I went to write it. I think a couple times a week. And they were, because I was learning, I was, and I think writing those letters helped me. Just because it made me more rational.
Sure.
And I think it helped our clients tremendously, and I think they appreciated that. But when I see portfolio decline, I have to remind myself this is businesses, and this is just an opinion of the market today what they're worth. It's not a final judgment.
Yeah, sure. But it's taking a 40-50% drawdown on stocks or portfolios. Sometimes you feel that it's a mistake. In hindsight, then probably.
Well, you always what happens. You always shit. I should have sold it. I mean, it's a
psychological.
Yeah, it's always there. Yeah.
Do you